Mayan sexuality depicted in estelas. So for starters, according to Rosemary Joyce, so this image is unique in that it's the only surviving cave painting we know of from the late classic Mayan society that depicts two men sword fighting, as someone in one of my previous videos said when I first showed this image. But instead of sword, I'll say makwawid, or makwa for short. So at least it's semi-culturally appropriate. This dates to approximately 692 to 771 CE. So that image is found in the cave of Naj Tunich. I'm probably butchering that. And it was one of the many places where Mayan nobles congregated, specifically only those that were men. The images in these caves show that these men engaged in bloodletting rituals where they pierce their makwas. Some of the images also depict men auto-gratifying themselves with their makwas. But you will not just find makwas depicted in cave paintings. As Joyce points out, there's at least 22 classic Mayan sites, most of them being in Chichen Itza, that depict this kind of imagery. But for example, there is the famous House of Phalai, which has literal structures of erect makwas. Some of them are pierced, and some of the makwas were even carved into water spouts. So the ancestors had a sense of humor too, y'all. And sadly, Anglo-American and European researchers used to look at this and just kind of dismiss these sites as lewd. But recent research has shown that sites like these were places where young nobles were raised, right? This is where they learned to conduct rituals. And I guess you could say sex ed as well. And as Joyce points out, the depiction of makwas in these temples, they literally stood in as symbols of, I guess you could say, masculinity. Well, a symbol of masculinity if you wanted to be a noble, because apparently piercing yourself there was considered a rite of passage. So these caves were likely one of the places where people went to pierce themselves there. But as the image of the two men makwa fighting shows, there were obviously some men among them, right, that didn't just conduct ritual acts, right, in the caves. So in short, many of these stelas, they represent bloodletting rituals, which sometimes involved men touching each other's makwas. And some believe that these might represent Mayan men engaging in rituals of passage, at least those that were nobles. But on the other hand, some of these images might also represent what the artist who drew them might have thought was the beauty of male and male sexuality. And sadly, there was a previous generation of archaeologists that were uncomfortable talking about this subject, hence why we hear so little about it. Here's one article of the unusual sculptures of Yucatan. I know I'm butchering the pronunciation, don't kill me. And I highly recommend reading Rosemary Joyce's A Pre-Columbian Gaze, including the citations here.